And once you get in there, you have the power of the purse. And we cannot let these programs that we have built up over years. I mean, I just traveled around to 5 counties. People love their recreational centers. People love their libraries. Obviously, love their schools, their fire districts, whatever it might be. And the budget cut that we're seeing, and the number keeps changing, but they talk about 10% on a $30 billion budget, which is $3 billion. A portion of that comes from the federal government, and another portion of that is the state. And so we're seeing these massive amounts of cuts, and I've heard from Representative Singer, who said this is like going back to the dollars we had in, I think he said 2016 or 2018. So it's not like going back a decade in time or 2 decades in time. But that kind of haircut on a budget means that it's going to hit education and healthcare, because those are the biggest pieces of the budget. And what people, what progressives are trying to say, and what I'm trying to say is, well, first we've got to do the triage and make sure that we don't lose the vital services. And then we got to find the money in order to do, in my case, the Green New Deal of Colorado, because we have a dying oil and gas industry in Colorado. And we saw stories yesterday and the day before that John Hickenlooper's office took over $300,000 from Anadarko. I don't know if anyone saw this story, but that's scandalous. Even from a guy who grew up in Chicago where everything was corrupt in politics, all right? And so we've got to realize who's running this state, and we've got to make noise and say, we are not going to listen to this. We're going after a wealth tax, or the tax that you talked about. 271 is being proposed as a different type of progressive wealth tax, a referendum that would be on the ballot. They're talking about repealing the Gallagher bill. And we have to watch this because this is a bipartisan approach, and they're using it again as lowering taxes. And we have to think about, well, are we going to lower taxes so that a few people get a few $100s in their pocket at the expense of losing the type of services and the type of future that we're trying to build?
Thank you, Aaron. Byron, do you have any questions or anything you want to ask either of these two?
I'd like to hear more from Lori about her broadband for all plan.
Yes.
Lori, don't forget to unmute first.
There we go. Well, I think that education and businesses and communication are the key to our society. And like the delivery of phones and electricity, it should be the same thing. Broadband should be for everybody to be able to have access to. And I know in my district, people in Fremont County, not even that far out of town, have nothing. It's just terrible. You know, maybe 1 out of 7 days they can get online. But I want to make sure that the corporate industry and the government are working together to make sure that everybody has broadband. So I'm not sure if anybody has put any legislation forward in Colorado yet. I really haven't done a lot of homework on that yet, but I absolutely will, because that will be one of my key messages is Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and broadband. When I went to Custer County and visited with some of the Dems there, when I said Medicare for all and Green New Deal, they said, oh, those are national issues. And I said, so you don't want your medical care here to be the best it can possibly be? And you don't want your environment protected? And they got on board. They thought, okay, that can be a local issue. And then the broadband was, everybody jumps on that. So I definitely want to do the best that I can to get broadband, good, high quality, high speed broadband to everyone. Hey,
Yeah, and bringing quality medical care to the rural areas is also very important. It's actually part of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan and infrastructure plan to bring and ensure that there's quality health care, not just in the urban areas, but rural areas of America. Of course, with Black Lives Matter protests going into their third week, Art, I know you've been to some. I've been out to both Denver, Colorado Springs. I was at one in Parker. Lori, was there one in Salida at all that you're aware of? And did you have a comment on what we see going on with the protests nationwide?
I haven't heard of anybody in Salida, but I have also just been huckered down in the middle of my 11 acres pretty much all this time. Besides, I took a trip to New York and back, and most of that was happening on the way, the 8 days I was gone. And then getting back to Salida, normally in the past couple of years, if there's a rally, I've usually organized it, and I haven't gotten that far. I've been very busy with the Bernie delegates and with taking care of my brother, and now starting with my campaign. So I'm listening to a lot of the news, and I cheer on that you guys are going into Denver. That's a 3-hour drive for me, and so I haven't ventured to do that. But it is on my list to do a rally here in Salida. So I'm watching for timing and get that done too.
Let us know when you do that. We'll be sure to help you share and get word out.
That sounds great.
Aaron, did you have anything to add to that?
I'm blown away by how Colorado's representing. How my one of my first real protests. Well, my first real protest was for solidarity for Lech Walesa in 1981 in Chicago, with some 25,000 protesters. But was in New York City in November of 2014, and I guess the perspective, having been in over 10 Black Lives Matter protests and 4 or 5 in the last week alone, in Steamboat, Carbondale, Basalt, Summit, and Frisco, Denver. I took my kids to one in Denver. There'll be another one tomorrow night here in Carbondale. It's been, I've been watching Anthony's live streaming in Denver. Movements matter. And I've been a pain in everybody's ass for the past 5 years that I'm done with marches and we have to stay in the streets or we have to occupy the Capitol and so this is the type of thing that's happening. It's changing things because politicians get very scared when the microphone is always put in their face and what are you going to see different? And if it was a one and done kind of event, we would have not seen Senate Bill 2217. Leslie Herrod's been talking a lot about it. That is like unbelievable change. It still could go further, but this is why if you are protesting without demands, or if you're protesting and things aren't changing by the lawmakers, then it's just some kind of, I have a lot of different ways of saying it, but it's not going to result in the type of change, might change consciousnesses and things like that. But as Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, marches and protests are very important, but laws change things. And so I hope people stay in the street. I hope people continue to make demands. And what I also, and Anthony and I have talked about this offline, and Brian, is I hope that Democrats don't progressives don't circle the wagon trains and start shooting at each other and realize how powerful we are. You have the Republicans, you have the centrists, and you have the progressives. And I see that we see this time and time again, where we let perfect be the enemy of the good. You've got to work inside of the type of people who are legislating. And the example this week that blew me away was that all but one Republican voted for 217. So we could be doing the same thing if it's for climate change, if it's for banning semi-assault weapons, if it's for universal health care, or whatever the next issue is. It could be done on a local level. It could be done on, Lori was talking about things organized. There's like pop-ups, protests going on in Carbondale every other day where somebody's putting something on and 200 people show up. And then the news is covering it. And it's waking people up. And I'll say at the very end, and it's scaring the shit out of the conservatives and the racists. And that's what our job is, to create that kind of tension about what we're fighting for, which is simply something called justice.
Yep, that's why they say no justice, no peace. Anybody else have anything to add? Any topics that you'd like to discuss?
I'd just like to add on to that. I'd just like to ask, where do we go after, SB 217? That's a good first step, but what are the next steps in preventing police brutality and bringing justice to our criminal justice system that is currently, a racist system that's not serving the people? I'd like to hear some thoughts on that.
Real quick, for everybody who doesn't know, SB 217 is the Police Accountability Act.
Or Enhancement Act, or I keep getting the name of. And there's about 10 areas, such as body cams that everybody argues back and forth whether or not they're good. And I don't know if the immunity standards state in the bill whether or not, if a police is in violation, that he or she would personally be financially liable in a type of suit. Where it doesn't, what it doesn't have, that I thought was very surprising, is it doesn't have an independent prosecutor, so that it would get out of the system, because these are very incestuous systems where you have the police unions, you have the DAs, and we saw this with Michael Brown back in 2014, where you want to have taken out of the area and in the hands of someone else. The things that have popped up that are moving rapidly is defunding the police, which doesn't necessarily mean abolishing the police. It means reducing the militarization of the police forces and demilitarizing them. It means shifting dollars over to other types of criminal or restorative justice type of programs. These are programs that we're seeing in Europe and in New Zealand and other countries. This isn't pipe dream type of things. So those are the areas that it could start to go into, that it should go into. I was at a protest yesterday at Summit County, and I got up on stage and said, defund the police, demilitarize the police, and police officers left. And one of the town council people said, "Whoa, slow down, cowboy. We don't move that fast around here." This is, and I said, and I mean, like, never had this experience before, because Brian will attest, 2 weeks ago, I was like, defund the police, I mean, is that the right way to say it when we're trying to draw people in? Just as a English major, I would think we would want to word this differently so we could create the teachable moment. But what I said, because of people like Brian and other activists, is I said to them, defund the police doesn't mean abolish the police. It means, what I know from being in a Black Lives Matter movement as a white guy, is that in 2014, no one was saying it, or barely anyone was saying it in the communities in the middle America. No one was saying it in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. Now all of a sudden, everybody's saying it. Michael Bennett is saying it. John Hickenlooper is saying it. Andrew Romanoff is saying it. And what I have found personally is when you start to talk about Black Lives Matter, look at what's happened to NASCAR. NASCAR has fired companies that were making the helmets. I mean, I'm getting tweets from people who are sort of, no, I'm the kind of politics that I bleed, and say, did you see this? Oh my God, what a game changer is going on here. For the NFL to come out and apologize 4 years after Colin Kaepernick. So that's the consciousness part. That is the environment part. And then it's how we're going to see it in the legal part. And what I'd say back to Brian's question is, okay, all laws have to, they're concentric circles. You know, what did we see in the city of Minneapolis? They got up and said 7 votes, said we're going to defund the police. We don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, I think part of Birion, what he was saying was, what do we do going forward? And I have another different side of the perspective of that, and that is that, you know, when we can have some equal medical care and
Right.
education and environmental justice and
Thank you.
the wealth gap, you know,
Housing.
housing, mental health, the prison being reformed so that you don't have people in there because they were smoking marijuana. If we can get our society from that end to be more equal because of laws, because we really care that everybody is equal, some of all this will go away, I think. You know, we need those laws too for the police to not be killing people. But our society is really deep with these injustices. So that's why I want to go represent. Go ahead,
Yes.
Arn.
And there's examples of this already in Colorado. I mean, Aspen, remember, I mean, I live pretty close to Aspen, so I remember all the legendary stories of Hunter S. Thompson running for sheriff, right? And if you compared, I recently applied for a job as a sheriff officer in Pitkin, and in the interview I said, look, if you look into my background, there's no other police department I'm applying for, trust me, you know. And they have this kind of thinking already in their head. I once said to the former mayor of Aspen and County Commissioner Mick Eiler, I said, so this was almost 10 years ago. So where are you guys at on legalizing marijuana? He said, marijuana has been legalized for about 30 years in in Pitkin County. And so they had that mentality from the top down in the culture. So they probably weren't building up their budgets like others. And the things that people in Colorado have to say, I'll wrap up with this point, is I don't know the exact number, but there's like 25 counties in Colorado where the sheriffs will not uphold the red flag law. And those counties should be defunded by state dollars and federal dollars just on the basis that they won't uphold the laws that have been passed by our legislators.
Yes, guys, we've been on for about 30 minutes now. I had problems live streaming to Facebook, so I took it to YouTube, and of course we've got a video, so we'll share that all out on Facebook. But did anybody have anything to close, and then we'll wrap it up tonight and let everybody get back to their families? I know Arnie, you need to get back to your kids, and I was just getting a call. Somebody's calling me.
Well, I'll just say, as a candidate, we're 18 days out, and we could have deep policy conversations, but I've been in campaigns since I was 16 years old. This is maybe my 10th or 20th real campaign that I've been involved in. We got to get people to vote. We cannot be playing how perfect or this or that. I know what it's like to pass so many pieces of legislation that you end up pissing off half of the voters, and then, but stop it, stop it. This is a life or death situation in a civilization with climate change, with racism and inequality. Focus, focus, and we have 18 days. That means take some time, help make some phone calls for a candidate that you like, maybe give a couple dollars, and make sure your friends and neighbors are voting. I stopped at a gas station in Grand Junction in Glenwood Springs with a Black Lives Matter shirt on, and the woman said, "Oh, I love your shirt and all that." I'm like, "Great, you got to vote." And she says, "I don't vote. If I vote, I might vote for the wrong person like Trump, and I'm not going to vote for Hillary because she's part of the Illuminati." Okay, we have these deep progressive conversations. Get out of this navel gazing stuff that progressives are doing when you're at first and goal, and get people elected in the primary onto the general, because Bernie Crats believe in movements, and we got to talk about our message. Otherwise, it's just the neoliberal message.
And Lori, do you want to say anything to close us off?
Yeah, it's really quick. This is my first time ever running for anything. Bernie inspired me from the first 45-minute video I saw of him from December of 2015. And every day I woke up saying, what else can I do for Bernie? And I did every single day. And I am doing this because of Bernie. And I just thought, I'm going to learn everything I need to learn. I'm going to stay active in all the things I need to do this year. I am not primaried because everybody else was chicken, but I'm going forward, and I want to help the people. I'm in this because I have 3 children and 5 grandchildren, and I want their lives to be the best that they can be. And I want to be able to say, I did what I could, everything that I possibly could to help their lives and everyone else's children and grandchildren. So not just mine will benefit from my efforts. And so on we go. And again, we need to make sure we have people understand that these campaigns are not run for free. We've got to have some money to be able to put out postcards, text bank, phone bank. My year this year is volunteer to become this candidate. And I'm going to keep volunteering. So I'm hoping that others will volunteer and donate and help the campaign for House District 60 win my seat to Denver. So thanks so much for doing this, Anthony.
You are very welcome. And thank you for running out there in red CD5. I'm going to close off with my little comment on Brian's question. Where do we go from here? Because really it's very simple. We continue doing what we have been doing. We organize, because when we organize, we win. And the solution is simple. It's our revolution. Thank you both for being on tonight and taking time out of your day. Have a great evening and stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.